Thank you for joining me this week. My name's Kevin Martin, and I'm here with the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program's weekly update. I wanted to talk to you guys about some current events that have been in the news over the past couple of weeks, and I'd like to put a little bit of a perspective on it for our grape growing industry and what that means for us here in the grape region and as grape growers. So 2019 was not a good year for agriculture. Income looked okay. But it was really buoyed by about 40% of the net farm revenue was based in crop insurance and other subsidies like trade assistance. So actual revenue generated from activities related to agriculture were down significantly. And we saw that come through when the bankruptcy data came out, and bankruptcies for 2019 were close to a record high. They were up about 25% from 2018. But what that means in the grape industry is that we're in a period right now where prices are relatively okay. Demand is certainly solid for our product, and marketing contracts are much easier to come by than they were a few years ago. So we are not following those agronomic trends. This is going to give us some opportunities in the short term and probably create some challenges in the long term. So when we look at bankruptcies, it appears as though milk prices are really driving it. Wisconsin was certainly hit the hardest. Low commodity prices are also a contributing factor. Of course, some of that is certainly driven by trade disputes or what they're calling the trade war. And some of that may be resolved as we update North American trade agreements. But that being said, it's also kind of spillover probably from the dairy industry as well. A lot of our commodity products are used in the dairy industry, and a lot of farms overlap in terms of being field crop growers and dairy farms. So that being said, they're not necessarily affecting us. Just in New York and Pennsylvania alone, those two states account for about 6% of the bankruptcies, and again, probably focused in other areas of agriculture. So what this does mean is that we are starting to see, we talked about this in December, we saw trade prices for fertilizer decline pretty substantially. We're now seeing that in retail prices, so you will see some savings, particularly in the area of potash in your fertilizer amendments. Now, for some growers, that probably happened too late. The December applications, they saw some of that price decline, but it's probably come down another $30 a ton since then. We may see that in urea and the urea market as well. We obviously won't see it for lime, as that price doesn't really change. We'll see it in phosphorus to the extent that we use phosphorus in certain products that are overexposed to these commodity-based agricultural activities that are struggling. We will see those price declines. So it'll depend based on what phosphorus product you use. We're seeing the same thing in chemicals. I talked about chemicals last time I gave you a podcast update. We're seeing more of a widespread decline now that I've had a chance to look at herbicide prices and even some of the less expensive ones. While we caught a few where price was going up, it really does seem to be commodity specific. If it's being used by certain industries, they did take a little bit of a hit to price. So you've got some buying opportunities here. I do think, though, that there's some general melees across the industry, and basically what I mean by that is in the fertilizer industry and the chemical industry, there's some concern about the sustainability of the agricultural sector. So I think what we'll see going forward is less of an investment in some of these products. So we may see less new chemistries or less R&D. We may see consolidation in the industry. So while we're seeing, for example, the price of name brand Roundup decline pretty rapidly, we may not see new chemistries in the future, and we may see consolidation that results in higher prices in the future. So this is definitely good for grape growers that are in a good spot in the short term, but there are some long-term trends here that are probably concerning because of some of the real dramatic changes in the market. If we could get through the trade war and some of these commodity challenges and maybe see the milk price come back up just a little, I think sort of $4, $4.50 corn and you'll start to see things like they're using enough pesticides so the market gets control of itself. What you might see, though, instead is an overreaction that takes place 3 or 4 years down the road. And what's going to happen in that scenario is you'll see more volatility. So instead of $4.50 corn, you might see $9 corn. And then you're going to see people fighting over these commodities like fertilizer and chemicals, and they'll be in short supply. So you'll see extremely high prices for some of these input costs, because at $9, it's going to make a lot of sense to spend a whole lot of money growing corn. So if we can get these markets turned around quickly and a little more painfully, we could potentially avoid the volatility in those prices. But if it takes a while, it's probably more likely that we're going to see that volatility. So it's just something I think to watch, pay attention to, and at the moment take advantage of what you've been given in terms of an opportunity to buy certain chemicals and fertilizers at a lower cost. And also enjoy the fact that we're in kind of a good space in terms of price and market compared to some of our larger and economically more important crops that are being pinched because of trade disputes and changes in the economy and things like that. So we're not in a great spot, but it could certainly be worse. And I think we are in an okay position to do things like put on too much potassium and build it in the soil, so that if the price does go crazy, you're not getting a soil sample and getting a recommendation for 600 or 700 pounds. You're in a spot where when prices are high, you're just using maintenance applications of maybe 150, 200 pounds. So now is a decent time to build, and I would predict in the next 2, 3, or 4 years it won't be. So I think that's all I have for today. If you have questions about any of this, we are in future updates going to discuss some more of those prices, just like we did a couple weeks ago, to get you some more concrete data about where those prices are and what it looks like for your operation. But wanted to give you an update on the overall trends, I think, that are probably driving some of those prices. Thanks for joining us. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to contact us or comment down below, and we'd be happy to answer them. As I said, I think we're going to have some opportunity in future updates where we plan to do that. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.